Hello, I'm Harry Riley. Welcome to Harry's 10-Minute Tales. This story is in two parts because it's a bit longer than usual, and I'll start with part one. It's called Lucky and the Missing Model Wife by Harry Riley. I don't know you from Adam, and what's more, I don't believe a word you say. Just because I live in a cheap flat in a run-down area of Birmingham, you think I'm stupid. But you're the clown, mate, not me. Your story just doesn't add up. The man sitting outside and who drove you here, in that old banger, is quite clearly an employee of yours. The suit you're wearing would cost a bomb, even in a high street charity shop. I know Savile Row when I see it. And that cut glass accent you're trying so desperately hard to hide would have set your family back a king's ransom. So please, cut it out and stop playing silly buggers. You're going to tell me the real reason for your visit, or I'll set Blackie on you. The big raw-boned Irishman grinned as he made this last remark, bringing the tension down a notch or two. He whistled, and a jet-black moggy leapt off the window ledge and jumped into its owner's outstretched arms. Now come in, and let's start again, shall we? And please, the truth this time. Or one word from me, and the cat'll scratch those hand-tooled brogues of yours to ribbons. The only reason I'm wasting my time talking to you is that you mentioned Andy Walker. Chief Inspector Walker and me go back a long way, since I was in the force. The middle-aged male visitor shrugged resignedly and accepted the use of a chair in the cramped kitchen diner. His reluctant host put the kettle on and wiped two cracked beakers ready for a brew. While this activity was going on, the cat was noisily licking milk from a saucer under the table. The caller produced a slim silver case and removed a deckel-edged business card. It read simply, Lord Granville Gauntly, KBE. The resident shook his guest's hand and offered up his own, more modest card. Pleased to meet you, sir. As I'm sure Andy will have told you, I'm Osborn Lucky, of the Black Cat Detective Agency, known to acquaintances as Lucky, and to friends as Born Lucky. The distinguished lord pocketed Osborn's card and studied the Irishman intently as he supped his tea, taking great care to drink from an undamaged part of the cup's rim. You're perfect, my friend, absolutely perfect for the part. Grow those sideburns a bit longer, and forget to shave, and you'll be just dandy. Osborn was intrigued by this last remark. I don't know what part you have in mind for me, but as for being perfect, I have to admit I'm far from that. I was dismissed from the police for gross incompetence, by which they meant I'm awkward and clumsy, and as you can see, I'm hopelessly addicted to luxury and self-living. The irony was not lost on his visitor, who couldn't conceal his distaste for the cat ears and scruffiness of his surroundings. At least you're honest. Andy said you'd had a bad deal being kicked out of the police, and that you'd do me a fair job at a fair price. So let me begin. I'm a successful barrister, and 10 years ago I married a beautiful model and took her to live at Gauntly Manor on the 1,500-acre Warwickshire estate I'd inherited from my father. Our lives since then have run along predictable lines. I have my legal work, and she has her horses and close circle of celebrity friends. Sadly, we have no children. All was well until I mistakenly allowed a trespasser to squat on my land. I was set for evicting him immediately, but my wife, Alison, poor girl, is a soft touch, and persuaded me to show a bit of goodwill to a poor gypsy fellow. He was alone apart from his border collie, living in a traditional Romany caravan. You know the sort, horse-drawn and very picturesque. I understand he'd come down from the north of England. He may have family connections up there, I don't know. Unbeknown to me, while I was toiling at the bar in London, she was getting to know this travelling fellow, a little too well it transpires. The crux of the matter is that now, 3 months later, he has gone, and so it seems as she. When I arrived home after working away for several weeks on a very important fraud case, I found the house empty and a letter saying she had no choice but to take to the open road and live life as a free spirit, following some romantic ideal and having found a true soulmate who'd shown her what real life was all about, and that earthly possessions were the hollow, meaningless trappings of a sick capitalist society that would one day crumble into dust. Here the barrister broke off, beside himself with pent-up emotion and grief for his loss, wiped his wet eyes and reached out, clutching the detective's arm and making him spill his tea. "Please, you must help me find her. I know you can do it. You have to bring her back. She means everything to me, more than life itself. Please, I beg of you. You can have whatever you ask. You will do it, won't you?" "Well, what do you think, Blackie? Can we spare the time in our busy schedule, or should I tell this gentleman to go and whistle for his missing wife?" The animal looked up at his master's remarks and then carried on slurping his milk unconcernedly. Osborn took this as a yes, and agreed, provided his customer allowed him to deduct all necessary expenses from Lord Gauntly's own credit account. "I'll need to spend a day or two at the Warwickshire estate, getting a feel for the task, look for any clues, etc., and then try and hire a horse-drawn gypsy rig for a few weeks to sniff out her trail." The barrister gave a relieved sigh. "I'm returning directly to London for the start of another big court trial, but you can have free run of the place, all except the west wing, which remains locked for safety reasons. It needs major repairs, so please keep out. Give me a day or two to set up things with the bank, and then you can draw your expenses from my number 2 account. She's been gone a week now, so the sooner you get started the better. He could have taken her back up north for all I know." The client scribbled down the directions to Gauntly Manor and passed over a spare set of keys. "There's only the old gardener and a cleaning woman that does for me twice a week, so you'll not be interrupted in your quest." He gave the detective his mobile phone to keep in touch, and Osborn promised to do his utmost to find a wandering wife, and warned she might not want to return, and I have no powers to make her do so. His new client shook his hand and delivered some final words before parting. "Bring her back to me safe and sound, and you'll leave this grubby rat trap forever. With me as your friend, this could be the turning point in your whole life." The drive down to Warwickshire with Blackie asleep on the back seat was uneventful, and very soon they were driving along the winding lane that led to Gauntly Manor. Osborn soon settled into his opulent new surroundings, exploring the house and gardens, and considering that the barrister certainly did himself proud. After a very short time, though, he was disappointed he'd found no clues. The woman seemed to have vanished into thin air. He was quite happy for the cat to wander off and do its own thing. He used to hate cats, and it was Blackie who, for some mysterious reason, had adopted him, a clumsy, out-of-work bachelor. The feline was now his perfect partner. It was the animal's unerring ability to zone in on the key to a problem that had solved each of his previous cases. And now, on the second day of his mission, he had no ideas of his own, and the cat had been away all night. Rattling a metal fork on a tin plate, Osborn called out, "Blackie, here Blackie, come on lad, time for breakfast, tinned salmon chunks." An hour later, there were still no signs of the nocturnal wanderer, and Osborn was getting concerned. There was nothing else for it. He would have to go and find his wayward pet. A search of the grounds brought no results, until the Irishman heard the sound of a small animal in distress. Listening intently, he was certain it was coming from the west wing. Annoyed and muttering to himself, "The silly animal's got himself trapped," Osborn collected a large flat-bladed screwdriver from the boot of his car and walked around the exterior of the ivy-covered building until he located a crumbling sash window frame. The old casement was sealed by several layers of thick gloss paint, but soon yielded to a bit of brute force with the screwdriver. And then, once inside the empty room, he caught his breath on the fusty air that assailed his nostrils. Almost instantly he felt something was not quite right. This side annex possessed a long corridor with rooms off to each side. He switched on his pocket torch as blinds had been pulled down over all windows, effectively excluding outside light. Eventually, after repeatedly calling Blackie's name, he elicited a positive response from behind the fifth door. It was not locked, but how the cat had entered the building was a mystery. Osborn's touchlight soon picked out his animal in a bedroom. An antique four-poster took up the middle. The other bedrooms possessed generous-sized dressing rooms, but strangely, this one did not. Bemused, Osborn considered the only way his animal could have gained entrance was down the chimney of the Georgian fireplace. And now, instead of gratefully leaping into its master's rescuing arms, the miscreant was busily scratching at a floor-to-ceiling dressing mirror on the far wall. On closer inspection, the detective realised that camouflaged in the mirror's pine framing was one particular waist-high knot that was actually a cleverly concealed button. Pressing this spring-loaded button made the whole mirror swing slowly outwards. Osborn reached down and stroked his little helper. "Oh, clever Blackie, I'm sure you've found something here." Instantly, the room filled with buzzing flies, and the smell of rotting flesh became unbearable. The detective's torch fell from his grasp as he confronted a scene from the very pits of hell. His stomach went into spasm, and dizzily lurching backwards, he grabbed at the four-poster for support. With his head spinning, faltering legs buckled and tipped him onto the bed. He had witnessed some terrible sights during police work, but nothing had prepared him for this. Desperately trying to restore his sanity, Osborn crossed himself. Holy Mary, Mother of God, how can anybody do such things? End of part 1.